don't believe, do I still go to hell?
Well, this is the attitude of a lot of people. They'll go, "Oh, I don't believe that." Now, there's nothing
Yeah, so
wrong in
you're
telling somebody that you don't believe in a proposition,
no.
but you're not believing it cannot be the grounding that you're believing the opposite makes it true.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody says, "Well, I don't believe that," like I've said that sometimes. Like somebody asked me to say, "Why I don't believe that," but I'm not thinking because I don't believe it that that's the grounding for my opposition.
Well, this is the appeal to ignorance fallacy you keep talking about.
Yeah, yeah. How many times do I have to go through
That
that with
basically
these people?
shifts the burden of proof.
Yeah,
Yeah, it logically shifts the burden of proof back to
exactly.
you and not to them, which is what they want to do. And then you're fighting an uphill battle with them shifting the battle to you. And they're saying, I don't have to ground anything I believe. I just believe it. Therefore, it's true.
Well,
I think,
they're
therefore,
very,
you know?
yeah, they're very childish or adolescent in their reasoning, in the sense that when you ask them how God doesn't exist, they will almost always say there's no evidence for God. And then when you say, how does your claiming there's no evidence for God entail that God doesn't exist? Then they immediately go to an appeal to ignorance fallacy, saying, oh, well, I don't have a positive reason to believe in God. Okay.
Yeah.
They don't realize how not only fallacious that is, it has no sophistication whatsoever to it. And do you know, I've had professional atheists with PhDs, a good number of them say the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing. So the difference between you and I talking about what exists and what doesn't exist is not you or I. It's God who revealed himself, which is the self-revealing fact. So we can appeal to that fact to know who God is.
And if we appeal to anything other than that which reveals God, they could then fault us for having a baseless defense of God's existence.
Which is what many Christians fall into.
Yeah.
They fall into the pattern
Of
is the circular reasoning,
yeah.
Yes. And so,
remember, when we criticize evidentialism, it is not to say that it is inappropriate or incorrect to appeal to lines of evidence. We're not evidences. It must not be presented in a way that appeals to any false beliefs that the unbeliever has. Any evidences that we present will be inextricably and inseparable from the whole. Okay?
Yep. Well, that's the thing. So that would mean that how do I say this?
Okay, so hold on a second. So Chop Suey.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Chop Suey, come on up and support what you just said. Otherwise, I'm going to block your account for outright lying in the chat. You said God revealed to me that he's not real anymore. Okay, good. Okay. You see, that's
a contradictory statement.
Yeah, I know. So you see, this is the childish reasoning. Because you do not accept our presentation of the revelation of God, okay, your non-acceptance of it is not a rebuttal. Okay? So do you understand that when you say God revealed to me that he's not real anymore, that's a contradiction in terms?
No, he told me that he was going to
say that
exist.
No. Say that statement to yourself.
How old are you?
Irrelevant.
No, it is relevant because I like to know the age bracket, because if you're a 16 or 17-year-old and you're saying this stupid shit, it's understandable being a stupid teenager. But if you're 27, 37, or 47, that's really bad. So I'll ask you again, how old are you?
27, you got it.
Okay, so that's embarrassing that somebody who's almost on their way to 30 years old, that you're invoking a self-contradictory statement, something that a 15-year-old would say. Okay? So let me do this. Rather than just bashing you at this point, why don't you tell us what you really believe?
Well, you said that God's revealed himself to you, and I said he revealed himself to me that he's going to stop existing. So how do you prove me wrong?
How do you not?
That's a performative contradiction. A performative contradiction is a proposition or a statement that is in some way self-referential and contradictory, either by its own internal content or the background information or context that would be needed in order to ground the assertion result in absurdity or contradiction. So if God is God, then he being a necessary non-contingent being, it would be a contradiction to say that he would stop himself from existing.
That's just what he revealed.
Yeah,
to
okay.
me.
Yeah, look, Chop Suey, this is why I asked you your age, because I just gave you a very articulate and thoughtful refutation, and you've completely ignored what I said without giving a formal rebuttal, and then you just repeated your opening statement that I refuted without giving me a counter rebuttal. Okay? So if God is a necessary being, there are certain things that God cannot do. Okay? Even if one agrees that God is omnipotent, to be omnipotent does not mean that God can do everything, because God cannot do certain things that are either liabilities or a contradiction to his great-making properties. So if God exists, then he could not make himself not exist. Okay, that would be a performative contradiction. So do you realize how you've made your mistake?
Yeah, I just failed to understand how God could not do something.
I just explained that to you. Shall I go over it again to you? So theologians,
No, I heard.
It's the law of
listen carefully.
non-contradiction.
Sir, listen, I'm going to explain it to you. You're 27, I'm 63. I've spent a little bit more time studying theology, philosophy, and metaphysics than probably you have, okay? What you just said, any professional theologian, especially one who has training in philosophy and metaphysics, they would laugh at what you said as being, and I'm not trying to malign you, they would literally laugh at what you said because it's a stupid statement. So they do not define God's omnipotence to mean God can do anything, because then that would entail contradictions